Hey there, my name is Joshua Grainer, and I'm a men's health specialist. So, one of the things I'm really passionate about is changing the conversation about men's health to start moving away from this fixation on physique and sexual performance to really recognize the nuance that is necessary for us to be healthy as men. Because honestly, we're a lot more than just our guns and just our cock. We are complex humans with complex emotions and complex physiology that changes as we age. And this is something that's not often talked about. And this is something that I'm very passionate about. And this is what I do as a profession. I work with men all day long, helping them to understand their health and performance through using lab tests, through doing various forms of assessments and figuring out what it is that they need to do to really improve their health and their performance. So what I'm going to do today is a little bit different. I'm going to use myself as a case study, which really is kind of vulnerable because I'm basically just kind of throwing my health out there, which as a health specialist, as a physician, as somebody who's been working in medicine for the past 25 years, to admit some of my own challenges with health, it feels pretty vulnerable. But I'm doing this for a couple different reasons. One is I feel that by sharing these things with you, you might start to get an insight into some questions that you can start asking about your own health and your own performance. And maybe we can start to get this conversation, move this conversation forward about men's health, about what it really means to be a healthy man, especially as we age. And so that's the first reason. The second reason is I kind of need some support myself. I need some accountability myself. And if I put this out into the world and say, this is what I'm concerned about, and this is why I'm concerned about it, and these are the very specific things that I'm doing, and I don't do any of that shit, well, I'm hoping that somebody will reach out from my community and hold me accountable, because this is what I do as a men's health specialist, as a consultant and a coach all day long. So really what I want to do is I want to help you to understand things from a medical level, from a mental health level, and use myself as an example so that way you can start to make some changes as well. And I also want to point out before I forget, I've created a document that I'm calling the Optimum Men's Health. Um, oh man, what did I call it? I used too many words. Anyways, it's a cheat sheet. This is a cheat sheet that basically goes through all these things, all different types of lab values, supplements, nutrition recommendations, fitness recommendations, all this stuff. And the vast majority of it is either evidence-based, it's got good scientific basis for it, or this is stuff that I have been doing long enough, it's got enough anecdotal evidence that I feel like it's clinically relevant and can be really helpful. So I'm going to put the link to that in the notes or in the description for the YouTube, and you can access that. All right, so here we go. So I just did my blood work. I try to get my blood work done every 3 months, and I've just been noticing a trend that I'm not super happy about, and I'm going to talk about those things. So the first trend that I'm really concerned about is my cholesterol, more specifically my low density lipoprotein. I'm not as concerned about my high total cholesterol, but my low density lipoprotein, I'm actually very concerned about, because the threshold, the cutoff is about 100, and I'm at 197. Ideally, I want it down below 100. And the reason for this, well, actually, I'll get into the reasons for this at the next segment, but just know my LDL sucks and I'm not super happy about it. I'm going to be doing some other testing to make sure that, that it's actually a relevant score. But for now, it's a trend that I've just noticed over the past few years that my LDL levels keep on raising. The other metric that I'm concerned about is my fasting glucose level is 89. And ideally, I want it between 60 and 80. My hemoglobin A1C, which is a measure of, my long-term glucose. It's basically a measure of my insulin sensitivity, and it's a measure to see if I'm at a higher risk for developing type 2 diabetes or cardiometabolic disease in the future. My HbA1c is 5.3. It's not horrible, but ideally I'd like it down below 5. Now, my testosterone levels, according to The lab reference ranges, I'm perfectly fine. But as a men's health specialist, I know that these reference ranges aren't really accurate and they're not accurate to me. So my testosterone levels are a total testosterone of 550, but my free testosterone is only 9. And this is nanograms per milliliter or deciliter, nanograms per deciliter. Um, Ideally, I would want my total testosterone to be between 7 and 800, but really, I would like for my free testosterone to be closer to 18, so almost double what it is now. And there's another metric called sex hormone binding globulin, and mine is right at 30, and ideally, I'd like it to be 20. And I'll explain a little bit more about that later. As I've been tracking my sleep for the past couple years, just this past year, actually, I've noticed that my sleep is at 69% efficiency. And ideally, I want it to be at 80%. My VO2 max, which is a measure of the max amount of oxygen that I can use during exercise, is only 42, which is 45, puts me at the 45 percentile for my age. Ideally, I'd want my VO2 max to be 51. Stress. So these past few years have been really stressful. I sold my medical practice during COVID, and I've been trying to start a new business, or I've started a new business. And this whole process has been really stressful for me, having been in practice for a very long time and changing certain things about my lifestyle really put me into a little bit of a stress spiral that I've been working myself out of. But stress is definitely something I've been concerned about. And I've noticed a tendency that I'm worrying more just in general, just I'm in a state of passive worry. And this is not something that's like me. Normally, people really refer to me as somebody who's very calm, very collected, which I normally am. And I usually don't worry much, but lately I have been. So that's something that's concerning for me. And lastly, sleep. So I experienced a vaccine injury back in March of 2021. No, it was April of 2021, after I got my second COVID shot. It was a Moderna. And it made me very sick. It gave me really severe heart palpitations within like a few hours of getting that shot. And then after that, I developed generalized anxiety and pretty severe insomnia. And it took about 6 months for me to kind of fully recover from those intense symptoms. But the problem is my sleep quality, while it's a lot better than it was, it's still not as good as it was a couple of years ago. So some days I just feel exhausted and I feel less motivated. And these are things that I want to fix. So why are these things concerning? So with the exception of my high cholesterol, most doctors would look at me and look at my lab tests, look at everything else, my body mass index, my muscle mass, all this stuff, and give me a completely clean bill of health. Even my own personal doctor isn't overly concerned about my cholesterol numbers. But data on disease prevention and longevity, they all tell a different story from what my conventional medical doctors are discussing with me. The problem is that the combination of my very high density or low density lipoproteins, my high LDL, which is a type of cholesterol carrier, and my high borderline glucose and borderline high hemoglobin A1C, all three of them, the combination of these three, all put me at a higher risk for almost all forms of chronic preventable disease, including stroke, heart disease, and dementia. In addition, my moderately poor sleep also puts me at a higher risk for almost all forms of chronic preventable disease, as low quality sleep has been associated with all-cause mortality. My high stress puts me also at a high risk for chronic disease, and it also affects my current quality of life with, being able to just, for my mental health to feel balanced most of the time. My VO2 max indicates that my aerobic efficiency isn't high enough to keep me highly active when I'm older, and I'll talk a little about this more. My moderately low testosterone levels make it harder to build and maintain skeletal muscle mass. And since falls and fractures are the leading cause of death for people over 70, keeping strong and having good skeletal muscle is critical for longevity, for both lifespan and health span. In addition, my chronic neck pain, I had a parachuting accident while I was in the military, and that while the pain comes and goes, over time I've noticed it getting worse, as well as my shoulder tightness. And I've also noticed that my vision is starting to go. I've normally had a 20/10 vision, perfect vision. I've been a sharpshooter and a well accomplished marksman for most of my life. And I just noticed not so much for far vision, but near vision, things are getting blurry. I'm having a tendency to play the trombone a little bit with my iPhone or with my book as I'm reading, and these are things that I'd like to slow down if possible. So the thing is some people would look at me, especially like my doctors, and think, okay, here's a very healthy person, and I might be compared to the average middle-aged man in the United States. The thing is, I'm not just concerned about my health now, I'm concerned about my health in the future. So I always take my clients through a thought process, through kind of like a thought simulator that's called backcasting, where we imagine how they want to be living in fine detail for the last decade of their life. We then reverse engineer their goals to create their current health and performance strategy. And the thing is many people find that their current health is not sufficient to meet their future goals. And this is also the case for me. How I want to be living, the metrics, the level of health that I need to have now, I believe isn't sufficient for me to have the quality of life that I want to have in my 80s. So here's the big question. What am I doing to correct this? Just a sec. So for my sleep, I'm going to be aiming for 8 hours in bed each night. And I'm taking a combination of L-theanine, it's an amino acid, L-glycine, also another amino acid, magnesium, and then a supplement called apigenin every night before bed. And apigenin is an extract or a concentrate of chamomile. It's a very specific supplement that has a decent amount of literature on it for improving sleep quality. On the nights where I anticipate having sleep problems, or if I'm just having poor sleep, I'll take a drug that was prescribed to me that I asked my physician to prescribe to me called trazodone. It's 25 to 50 milligrams. And this is great for promoting restful sleep without the side effects of most sleep meds. It's not hypnotic like Ambien, and it's not a sedative per se. It just helps to reduce the difficulties with sleeping. Um, yeah, I don't want to get too much in the biochemistry, but anyways, it's effective. You can look it up. There's a lot of great data on it. For my cholesterol, I'm going to do some deeper lab tests. More specifically, I'm going to be looking at two markers. One is called ApoB and the other one is called LP(a). These are types of LDL cholesterol, so that some people can have actually low LDL cholesterol, but they can actually still be at a high risk of atherosclerosis or cardiovascular disease because these types of LDL, ApoB and LP(a), can actually be elevated higher than what is ideal. And the inverse can be true. So digging a little bit deeper, being a little bit more precise, looking at these specific LDL subspecies, if these are elevated outside of limits, then which puts me at a higher risk for cardiovascular disease, then I'll be considering some pharmacologic tests. In addition, or pharmacologic methods. In addition, I'm also going to be doing a coronary calcium test, which is a test to see if I have any calcium deposits or calcium buildup in my coronary artery. And actually, I scheduled that for next week. So if any of my tests come back with red flags, I'll start exploring different statin drugs to see if I can get an approved prescription for a drug called PCSK9 inhibitors. And if I can't do that, then I'll look at exploring different types of statin drugs. Although statins are getting a bad rap, and I've been resistant to taking statin medications, it's something that that I think is definitely worth exploring. I'm also going to be increasing my cardio training each week to about 180 minutes, so spread between 3 days. So, this is basically going to be about 60 minutes of cardio 3 days a week. I'm also in the gym. I'm also going to be reducing my focus on hypertrophy training. Hypertrophy training is muscle growth training. It's the type of training that's designed to gain more muscle volume, not necessarily muscle density or strength, but muscle volume. So you look more muscular. This is like what bodybuilders do. They focus primarily on hypertrophy training. And instead, I'm going to be focusing more on strength training and mobility, and really going to be focusing on increasing muscle density and strength. I still want to look good with my shirt off, but it's just not going to be my main focus anymore. And then lastly, supplements I'm going to take. I'm going to start taking, some of these I'm already taking, but I'll just give you kind of my core supplement list: alpha lipoic acid, omega-3 fatty acids, CoQ10, coenzyme Q10, a genomic multivitamin that has basically methylated forms of B12 and folate, increased vitamin D3, N-acetylcysteine, an NRF2 um, supplement, and specifically for my testosterone, a combination of 2 herbs and 1 mineral, tonkat ali, Fedosia agrestis, and zinc picolinate. If you're interested about what these different supplements do, download the cheat sheet. I've got a complete list of dosages, what these supplements do, some of the evidence behind it, and how they work. So the $1 million question is how I'm going to do this, because this is really a lot, right? Um, this is more than I would suggest for most of my clients to try to accomplish in a year. But I have a tendency to push myself a little bit harder than I would expect my clients to do. So I'm going to try to tackle all these things. But the thing is, I'm not going to try to tackle them all at once. The way that I'm going to do it is to create little micro challenges. So basically, each month, I'll be working on one different thing, one very specific thing. And then I'm also going to be sharing my experience with you, with my community, to get the support and feedback that I need to be successful. Because this is what I suggest for all of my clients to do is to break things up into approachable tasks and endeavors and goals, like goals that are achievable. And then do it for a limited time frame to the point that it becomes a habit. And using challenges in this way is one of the best ways I found for me and for my clients to gain these changes. All right. So I'm starting to fade. But I just want to let you know this is my call to action, right? So just to remind you, to help you out, I created a men's health and performance cheat sheet that you can use to go through a similar process that I've been going through to see where you're at with your health and figure out how to improve your health outcomes. The link is in the description below. Or if you'd like me to help you with your health and performance goals, click on the other link in the description to schedule a call, and then we'll figure out what you need. We'll order your labs, and so I'll help you develop a plan and support you on that process as well. Okay, I hope this was helpful for you. Have a good day.